Okay, we are live. All right, I am Ty Edwards, and I am from Women for Kansas, the Northeast chapter, and I want to thank everyone who is on the Zoom call and watching us on Facebook Live. I also want to say that we will post probably by tomorrow this same video on YouTube for anyone that needs to use access on that platform. So I want to thank Jay Armbrister, Stacy Simmons, Dale Flory, Clark Rials, Doug Woods, and Troy Squire for being with us. And then my co-host is Jennifer Scotten from Indigenous Native Voters of Lawrence and Douglas County. So we want to start today by acknowledging where we are. So the land that makes up the sheriff's jurisdiction has for the majority of human history belonged to Indigenous Americans and been the home to Indigenous Americans. This includes the Kansa and Osage nations and Caddoan peoples such as the Pawnee. But we also want to remember that due to U.S. colonialism, other Indigenous nations were forced and expelled from their homelands to live in what we now call Kansas. And for the sheriff's jurisdiction, that includes the Delaware and the Shawnee. Jennifer?
So just as we have acknowledged the original and rightful stewards of this land, we also want to recognize the many tribal nations whose citizens currently reside in Lawrence, Douglas County. Natives Vote, created and led by Native people, is on a mission to amplify the voices of Lawrence, Douglas County's Indigenous residents, calling for their representation in community policy, government, and for their participation in civic engagement to be actively sought after.
Thank you. All right, so I think you all have the instructions, but just for our listeners, we're going to have 7 questions, so 3 minutes each for all of you to answer. Jennifer and I will take turns asking questions, and we'll tell you time if 3 minutes has gone by. And I sent you the orders so that you can know what order we're going in, but we can help prompt you if you need them. And some questions will be answered by the sheriff's candidates and some by the undersheriff candidates. So I think we are ready for the first question. So Jennifer, take it away.
Yeah. So what are 3 things you will do when you become sheriff to build trust with the Native community here in Douglas County?
Yep, Doug, you're on mute.
I'm sorry about that. So the first thing I would do is the similar things I've been doing through my campaign. I think we have to sit down and talk with people, find out what issues are going on, what ideas they have that we could help improve those relationships. Myself and Troy, working with Haskell University, I think, is another issue that we need to focus on and make sure that we have a good relationship with the Haskell and all the incoming students. And I think that's always important. And finding out just what issues there are and what can we do to fix those issues, and how can we make things better for the Native folks in Lawrence and that are coming to town, the students. I know some of those issues sometimes are a little different. Folks come in, with every time we get new students in Lawrence, Kansas. It doesn't matter which school they're going to. It's a little bit of a different world from where they may have come from. So we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that while they're here, that this is a good environment for everybody and this is a safe environment for everybody.
Thank you.
Am I up? I believe it's me.
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, it evolves kind of like what Doug said around my campaign priorities. Mental health is one of them. Social justice, and I want to start a social justice committee along with my Undersheriff Clark Rials, where we get the community involved and have those hard conversations that we need to have and figure out how we move forward. That's one of the biggest things. And as far as like Black Lives Matters, Justice Matters, LGBTQ, IA plus, I mean, everybody needs to have a seat at that table. It's not just one individual group or another. It is everybody that needs to come together to figure this thing out. And I think that involves transparency and ultimately getting people together and having those conversations.
Thank you.
My turn. I think for years we've completely dropped the ball when it comes to outreach to Haskell University. That place has been there obviously for years and years, I mean decades, and we've done very little as far as I know of with the Sheriff's Office to reach out because I go up and I visit a little town called Marty up in South Dakota, which is on the Rosebud Reservation, and I I see the way that the dynamics of, first off, let me just say that I feel like the reservation system in the United States is America's dirtiest secret. The way that those are treated and the people that live around them it's disgusting, to be quite honest. And I see the way that the locals in those areas just have an outward despise for the people that live on the reservations. And I assume vice versa, but I'm not able to speak with them. And you come down here and we have this beautiful university with all these kids that come in from all over the country, from all these reservations where the outsiders they're not nice. I mean, that's just being friendly about it. And I don't understand how we think that they would reach out to us. It's really, the burden lies with the sheriff's office and us as the community to go in and reach out and say, I understand. I take responsibility for what has happened, and I need you to educate me on how I can best help and how we can, because I would really love to have a Haskell to the sheriff's office pipeline, which is a terrible steal of words, but to get those, we have several people who are former students at Haskell that work for us. I think we have 3 right now, and I'd love to see lots and lots more. But how do I start that? I've already reached out to like the Haskell Trio and the school paper. I can't think, I've already forgotten the name of it, but and I've been given the names of several key members with the Haskell Indian Nations University that I should be meeting with to talk to and find out. And I know that there's been a lot of turmoil with the turnover with the new president. So I think we all have a chance to really make a relationship, but I know that it's our job to get in there and earn that trust and earn their respect.
Thank you. So our next question focuses on your familiarity with the movement of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. The National Crime Information Center reports in 2016, there were 5,712 reports of missing American Indian and Alaska Native women and girls. Though the U.S. Department of Justice's Federal Missing Persons database, the National Missing and Unidentified Person Systems only logged 116 cases. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention reported that murder is the 3rd leading cause of death among American Indian and Alaska Native women, and that rates of violence on reservations can be up to 10 times higher than the national average. However, no research has been done on rates such as violence among American Indian and Alaska Native women and girls living in urban areas, despite the fact that approximately 71% of American Indian and Alaska Natives live in urban areas. So what are the issues with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Douglas County? And how would you navigate the issues with our local Native community?
Am I first on this one?
Yes.
I believe it starts with reaching out to Haskell Indian Nations University. We have to figure out, we know the problem exists. We just have to figure out how to better facilitate getting to solutions for this. Like has been said, I mean, there's reservations that you can't go upon. You need to reach out to people locally and have those conversations. I think that's what it boils down to. The statistics are there. I wasn't aware of those statistics, honestly, so it's good to hear that. It's just, I think we have to bridge the gap and have them want to speak to us, and us being law enforcement, we have to facilitate that conversation, because these marginalized communities are suffering and they're getting hurt, and we need to hear that from them. Without them coming to us or us taking a step to go out and speak to them, we're at a discord. We have to do better, and it's upon us to do that.
Thank you.
I'll be perfectly honest. I didn't know that those numbers were as staggering as they are. I don't understand the systems, and I admit that I need to be educated on how the reservations and their systems work. But what I can tell you, and it comes to just Haskell students coming to Douglas County and experiencing these things, again, it falls right back on the fact that we as law enforcement need to take responsibility for the, and let's face it, for being middle-aged white males, we need to take responsibility for the things that have happened in the past that have absolutely trashed that line of communication, but mainly the trust. Why would people want to report one bad act straight into a system that they don't trust at all? So I think once again, we find ourselves in a position where we need to go back, start over, beg for forgiveness, and say, we are in this together. Please tell us how we can help, and let them into their world and let them tell us what we need to know and how we can best help. I honestly don't have answers as to how you go about that, but I look to the leaders of that culture and of those communities to tell me how best to do it. So I thank you for those numbers. Clearly, that's something that I didn't know, and I'm embarrassed about that.
So I knew there was an issue, but I didn't know that, as Jay said, I didn't know the numbers were quite so staggering. But what I think we have to do is we have to continue, or start over, I guess would be a better idea, of working with everyone in the Native community, going to Haskell, those types of things, and building relationships and understanding that, what's going on in other jurisdictions. And we have to educate also that, if there's a missing person or these issues are going on, that we in Douglas County, we take that seriously, and we're going to investigate that aggressively to make sure that we can get some, find this person. And, hopefully with when it comes to missing person, there's always a hope that it's not a criminal act or that the person's not deceased by any means. But we have to be willing to go out there, and we have to investigate every case aggressively, but educating folks and say, yes, we take this seriously and we want to get resolution. We want to find this person. We want to do all the things we can do to bring resolution to this case. Because if they're being ignored in other jurisdictions and other places, I don't understand how that would happen, or how a law enforcement agency could ignore that situation. But I think that's where we are, or how we do business with the sheriff's office, is we're going to investigate that. But we have to build those relationships so people understand what we're doing, how we're doing it. And as was said, they're comfortable coming to us and making these reports or telling us that there's something going on, so we can look into that.
Okay. And so our third question is actually for the Undersheriff candidates. How does the jail currently meet the ceremonial or spiritual practice needs of the Indigenous population? And I'll go ahead and repeat. So, how does the jail currently meet the ceremonial or spiritual practice needs of the Indigenous population? I believe we're starting with Squire.
Right. I have no experience within the jail, so I'm not intimate with how that works. I believe that the jail would follow the practices, the freedom of religious practices that would be afforded to anybody and everybody, as they have other populations in the jail, but I do not have experience with that, so my answer would be very short.
Thank you. Simmons?
Unmute. You need to unmute.
Thank you. Yeah, we do follow some legalities, but for the most part, if it's something that we can accommodate, we absolutely will. We do have relationships with Haskell University, and they'll come in and do programs and things with the inmates. Obviously, right now with COVID, everything's shut down, so nobody's really getting much of anything, unfortunately. It's kind of a situation where, like for Muslims and the prayer rug, like we wouldn't allow a prayer rug per se, but we would allow an extra towel for them to do prayer. And so, those are the kind of things that we absolutely will work with. If somebody in the facility has questions or wants someone to talk to about that, then we will definitely look at that and consider that. If it's something that doesn't pose a security risk or undue harshness, I guess, like I would say, where additional staff would be necessary, then it's something that we're definitely going to look into and provide.
Yes, good morning. Like Captain Simmons said, yeah, we do have some, I wouldn't call them policies, but we do have accommodations to where we let people practice their religion of what type it is, whatever type it is. And as far as how knowledgeable I am about that particular one, then I really don't have an answer, but we do have the accommodations for inmates to practice their religion in our facility.
Thank you. The next question is for sheriffs again, so I'll let you, your musical chairs. All right. How many Indigenous people work in the sheriff's office? How do you plan to educate yourself and your staff about Black, Indigenous, people of color without placing that responsibility on your Black, Indigenous, people of color staff?
I think I'm first, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, first off, we don't ask people what is your race, what is it when we hire them, but I do know of I believe 6 individuals who have Native American heritage and ties. At least 3 of them went, I believe, to Haskell Indian Nations University. So we've also had several in the past as well. And one of them now works for Lawrence PD, Sergeant Starr. So I got to work with him for a while. He's a good dude. But when it comes to how do you educate yourself on how best to get into the BIPOC, what I have to do and what I intend to do is make myself accessible, but also stand quietly and learn about these cultures and about these communities and about the intersectional situations that they deal with and the marginalized groups, to get inside, learn from them, and then allow them to teach me what it is I need to know. I would never simply, if I was going to Haskell University to recruit students, I would never simply grab all of these alumni or Indigenous persons to bring with me as some form of a show pony type situation, because I think that's disingenuous and quite frankly, it's offensive. So it would be more of coming in and standing humbly and letting them know that I need you to help me to better represent this community. And that's exactly what I plan to do on all facets, whether it be Indigenous persons, whether it be women, whether it be, BIPOC, LGBTQ, all the underrepresented populations of our agency. I want to see them trust me enough to come and work for me.
Thank you. Woods is next.
Woods is next. Oh, okay. I think we have to start with being educated ourselves, and that means sitting down with people from the various communities in our town and our county, and listening to them about what issues there are and how we can help fix those issues and better those issues. But we also have to do a better job of recruiting people, and by recruiting people, it's been said, there's a great volume of people at Haskell that we would love to recruit to come to work at the sheriff's office. And as I said, there's been numerous people throughout the years of my years working at the sheriff's office that have graduated from Haskell and have gone on to work at the sheriff's office. Some of them have then switched to the police department. Another one of my good friends, he went on to work for the Bureau of Indian Affairs after he worked for the police department for several years. So he was a Haskell graduate also. So I think that's what we have to do. We have to be out there. We have to be willing to listen, and we have to do our job as recruiting people of all across all across the city and of the county, of the different groups that are involved in our community. We have to get out there and talk to people. We have to learn, and we have to do our part as far as recruiting people, showing them what it's all about. Just merely sitting down and talking to the students, I think, is important. Hey, would you consider a career in law enforcement? Here's the pluses about being in law enforcement. There's always some minuses no matter what job you're in. But we have to educate folks on that end too, of we want people to come to work for us. We need good people to come work for us. So just being out there and talking to people and learning about it, I think is the most important thing.
Thank you.
Well, I'm a big proponent of having a cross section of our community. Unlike what Jay had talked about, I think we do need people of color in those marginalized communities to serve in the department. We need more people like that to show that we're willing to change. We're bringing people to the table. This is how we need to grow as a community. And I look to implement a person of color as a recruitment officer for the sheriff's office. I think that's a needed thing, just to show them that this is what we're trying to do. It's not trying. We don't want marginalized communities to think that they can't work for the sheriff's office, but we need to have those conversations and get in there and connect with these communities that don't know, hey, it's okay to talk to law enforcement. In a lot of people's eyes right now, law enforcement are the bad guys. We need to find ways to facilitate that conversation and have a collaborative approach to doing this.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question is going to be for the Undersheriff candidates again. So Jay, I don't know if you need to switch. Okay. All right. How do you ensure the sheriff's office is a welcoming and supportive workplace for women? How do you prevent sexual harassment between colleagues and in the staff's interactions with the public and those in the jail? And Clark, you're first.
Good morning. We have a strict policy that prevents or should prevent or repercussions on sexual harassment in our workplace. And every year we have training on this topic and encourage anybody that's a victim of sexual harassment to report it. It's pretty straightforward. If you report it to a supervisor and that supervisor don't report it, then he or she is just as responsible for the person that's making the accusations or doing the harassment. Again, it's zero tolerance in our agency. I think we practice that very well in our agency, and I really don't see a need to change any of that, the way we practice that, and just keep building on it.
Okay. Troy?
Would you repeat the question again? Because I think the last part of that I might have forgotten.
Okay. How do you ensure the sheriff's office is a welcoming and supportive workplace for women? How do you prevent sexual harassment between colleagues and in the staff's interactions with the public and those in the jail?
So the first part of the question, how is the sheriff's office going to be a welcoming department? I think that is something that we have been working at for a long time in law enforcement. I know at the Lawrence Police Department, we have aggressively tried to recruit female applicants into our ranks and have been very successful. So having more women wearing the uniform kind of shows a welcoming environment to women in law enforcement. As far as the harassment at work, strict policies that spell out what will not be tolerated and a zero tolerance for people who violate those policies has to be the mandate. Same for the jail. We cannot house somebody in our jail and let them become victims of some type of bad behavior. So again, education, policies, and strict enforcement of that.
Okay. Stacy?
Thank you. I'll start with preventing sexual harassment. It is here. It happened yesterday to me. So these are things, and I'm a captain. And so it's a situation where you have to address it. I mean, there is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, you've got to step up and shut it down. And you have to see people doing that in positions of rank, shutting that down. That makes it okay to do that. And that empowers the people that are below the rank and file the boots on the ground type folks that are coming to work every day, and you're showing them that this is not tolerated. Having women in positions of rank has actually helped our agency out tremendously. When I first started here, we had 2 lieutenants that were females, 2 females on patrol, and then we got 3, and that was in 1999. And so it's just, it's a very male-dominated profession. There's a lot of folks think that this doesn't go on anymore, but it absolutely does. It's much less than it has been in the past, and I think that the sheriff's office is doing a great job of that. We've still got some work to go, obviously, but we have to step up. Not only the women of this organization, but the males of this organization have to step up. And once it gets out that this isn't the culture of our organization, then that's how things change. It's kind of a generational almost, where new folks kind of come into work for us, and they see that this isn't how it works from the get-go, and then it's not tolerated, and as they move up the ranks, then it just becomes, that's the norm. As far as welcoming for women, again, we've hired, it's getting easier to hire women than it is male people of color. We do have a lot more women now in our organization, which I think is amazing. Maybe 4 or 5 months ago, we had a lieutenant promotion and a sergeant promotion, and half of the women, or I think there was like 6 for lieutenant, half of those were women. I think there was 4 for sergeant, half of those were women. That's never happened in our sheriff's office ever, which is pretty amazing. And so those are the ways that I think we're growing. And then women are out recruiting other women, because if it's a safe place to work, they're willing to share that with other women. And so I think we're doing a much better job of that. Booker T. Washington, the quote is, there's 2 ways of exerting one's strength. One is to pull up and the other is to push down. There are women in our organization right now that have kind of formed an alliance with us and the Lawrence Police Department females. We get together, we talk, we see what's happening in our organization, and we're trying to reach back and pull these women up in our organization. We have 3 female lieutenants. We have 2 female sergeants. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, so the next question is a sheriff question. Okay, in other forums, it was implied that the sheriff's office is at the mercy of the state legislature, the district attorney's office, and the courts. As an elected official, how will you collaborate with other elected officials to enact the policies you are campaigning on? And Doug, you're first.
Well, you have to enact policies that we're talking about. You have to be able to sit down with people from the district attorney's office or the district attorney. You have to be able to sit down and work with the county commissioners. You have to be able to reach out and have relations and conversations with your legislators. And I think that's where it all starts at, is being able to sit down with folks, talk to them about what the needs and the issues are with the sheriff's office and what can we do to change that. Or even the judges. And the judges are a little bit more difficult to communicate with because the judge is a judge, but you can have a conversation with them. You can have meet with them as a group. You can meet with them individually and talk to them about what are we doing about bond issues and stuff like that. Again, we have no control over what bonds are set. When it comes to the district attorney's office, what are people being charged with? What people are being allowed to have diversions? Can we push that along? Again, that has nothing to do with what we do, but it does have a big effect on the entire criminal justice system in Douglas County and across the nation. Meeting with our local legislatures, something I've been doing throughout my campaign, of trying to establish relationships now with our local legislators so that when I'm elected, we can continue those conversations. And those have been some good conversations. Some of them are more pointed conversations as far as, the legislature enacts laws, but they don't allocate any funding for the local law enforcement agency. When you're going to put someone, when they decided to make a person serve an extended sentence for a felony DUI, that was decided that you would serve that sentence in the county jail. But there wasn't any funds allocated to how do we deal with that? How do we pay for that? Just throw it back on the county and they'll take care of it because they can come up with the money easier than the state can. So we have to be able to constantly have those conversations. We have to be able to listen too, because everybody has their own ideas. Everybody has a direction they want to go, but we have to all try to go in a similar direction and find a way to meet in the middle with most all these issues.
Dale?
I agree. I believe people across the nation and locally, I mean, we all want criminal reform. I mean, that's the hot topic right now. And like Doug said, that starts with communication with the DA's office, the legislatures, the judges, defense attorneys. I mean, everybody needs to come together to work collaboratively to get these changes that we need to have happen. It's not just law enforcement. It's not just the judges. I mean, it is everything, and everybody needs to have a part in that conversation. That's basically all I have.
Jay?
Well, I think Deputy Flory just described the CJCC. But I will echo the sentiment is that it starts with communication. Again, we are statutorily bound by certain things that we have very little control over how those things come to be. But what I can say is that having the jail, and that's the main thing we're going to be talking about, is because that's where the conversation is going right now. But the courts and the DA's office have so much to do with our jail population, but yet we hold this key set of data that can be utilized, mined, and stripped away and looked at through new lenses to see where these problems are. And if we identify some sort of an anomaly or some sort of a problem, we can track it back to whatever system it was originated in, go to that system and say, here's the numbers, and here's what you're doing to us by creating or facilitating this problem. What can I do to help you? And how do we get it fixed? Because we're going to have to get it fixed. Just the same as if they came to me and says, when you do this, you cause me problems here. I would be like, okay, well, then what do we need to do to fix it? What can I do? How can you help me? I want to be the same thing. But also when it comes to, getting a new judge, getting an additional judge in Douglas County, you have to go clear up to the state to get that. And the state, not only are they broke because of our last governor, but they're just not interested in listening to it right now. So they won't even let us fund our own. They won't approve it, but let us fund our own. They have to approve it and fund it. And they're just unwilling. So I think in a situation like that, it comes to the point where I think you got to be up there and be aggressive and be downright offensive almost, in the point where you need to call these people, your representatives in the legislature, and say, you are creating this huge problem for us. We need your help, and you're doing nothing, and put the onus back on them.
Okay. All right, and this is the final question. After this, we'll do closing remarks. If you are the losing candidate, what will you do to support the winner and ensure a successful sheriff's office? Dale, you're first.
Well, if I'm the losing candidate, I hope to have a job still. That's one thing that people oftentimes don't realize, that the new sheriff, everybody works at the discretion of the sheriff. So basically what I would do is tell him that I will serve and will be a strong advocate for him. The public has spoken, and basically I want to do what I can to help lead the department.
Jay?
Yeah, that's quite a question. We've done like 6 of these, and we haven't had this one yet. First off, Dale, nobody's getting fired. If I was to win, but if I lose, I'm going to be completely honest. I'm appreciated that somebody finally asked the question. If Captain Woods wins, I will be seeking employment elsewhere. If Deputy Flory wins, I'll be seeking employment elsewhere. I don't see myself continuing on in this agency, and I have my reasons for that. So it's pretty simple, and I'm willing to talk about those reasons at any time with anybody. But for me, running, I knew, was a huge risk, and I'm risking not only my career but my retirement and my insurance. But I feel so strongly about it. But I appreciate you asking the question. That was that one got my heart palpitations going. Thanks.
Doug?
So I think if I was the losing candidate, I think I would continue doing what I'm doing. And I think that, we have some varying opinions on most of the issues, but every one of the candidates wants what's best for the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. And if Jay decides to keep me around, I will work with Jay to help him achieve his goals. There are some things that Jay and I agree on. There are some things we don't agree on, and that's just human nature. But I think we have to work together with one another. If Dale wins, there are some things that I don't agree with on Dale's platform, but there are other things that I do agree with Dale. And if I can help them with those things, then I'm willing to do that, because I've invested my entire adult life in the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. And I plan on being around for a while. So as long as they're willing to keep me around, I'm willing to help them, because it is about, we're all lifelong Douglas County residents. We've all born and raised here. Very much invested in this community and the people that are in our community. So if I can help Jay, if I can help Dale, then I'm willing to do that, because it's still what's best for Douglas County.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we wanted to give you some sizable time to sum up some of your remarks. Of course, everyone knows that this election for sheriff will be decided in the primary, which of course is coming up August 4. So we wanted to give both the undersheriffs and the sheriffs time. So we're going to give 3 minutes to each undersheriff and 3 minutes to the sheriff candidates. And we're going to start with Troy.
All right. So in closing, first, I would like to thank the Women of Kansas and Indigenous Voters Group for their interest in this very important position. I would also like to say something to the men and women who have stepped up to seek leadership during this time of not crisis, but conflict and turmoil. I think it is admirable for anybody to want to step up and lead during difficult times. And so I'm honored to be amongst these other 5 wonderful people. When Doug first approached me about being his undersheriff, there were 3 things we spoke about that he wanted me to bring with me as undersheriff. One was my executive experience and the time I spent as a commissioner in the city of Eudora. I learned budget. I learned the big picture view of an organization that I think is necessary for a sheriff or undersheriff to have. Doug also wanted to explore my command experience and my supervisor experience. I've been with the Lawrence PD for about 24 years. I'm currently a captain. I have been the commander of the patrol division and currently of our training and professional standards division. I have supervised investigations. I have supervised our tactical team, and I bring a lot of frontline experience with me to the table. The last thing that Doug was particularly interested in was my community service involvement. I have spent the last several years working within different groups in the community. I've been a part of the Special Olympics for Kansas group, helping raise money and working with kids, the Bigs in Schools programs through Big Brothers and Big Sisters. I sit on a student success committee at Haskell for the last 3 years, where I've built relationships at Haskell with Dr. Tanya Salvini and a group of folks that are focused on student success and the folks coming into our town having the resources and the education to be successful here. I've worked with Lawrence Memorial Hospital's Safety Review Board. And lastly, I've been very involved with active shooter education within our community. This has been a great platform for law enforcement to get out and meet different groups of all sorts and show the citizens of Lawrence and Douglas County that we are part of this community. So those are the 3 things that Doug wanted me to kind of bring to the table. And that is the outside perspective that I think I would be able to share with Doug as he takes the sheriff's office into the next 4 years. Thank you all.
Thank you. Doug?
Well, yeah, I won't rehash what Troy just said, but what I want to tell folks is that, who don't know me, is yes, I've been in the sheriff's office for 33 years. I've worked my entire adult life there. I started at 18 years old. And as I worked my way through the ranks, I've supervised every division we have in the sheriff's office with the exception of IT, and that's a really good thing. And I've never worked in the IT division, which is a really good thing. But there isn't anything in the sheriff's office that I haven't done or I haven't supervised, really. And I think, that's important. My administrative experience over the last 15 years or so as a lieutenant and as a captain when they reclassified our rank, that's what I bring to the table, is those abilities. But I also bring the abilities in my community interaction. I'm able to get out into the community, do things with the community. My big issue that I've always been a very big advocate of is young people, working with kids in our community, because I think that's where a lot of things start. Whether it's mentoring at-risk youth, whether it's coaching new sports, those types of things to me are really big. I've been involved with the Ballard Center. That's something that's very dear to my heart, is the Ballard Center, with the at-risk kids at the Ballard Center. Working with big brothers and big sisters, bigs in schools. Those are issues that I think are very important, that we start with the young people in our community. We start reaching out, we start establishing relationships at a young age, and we continue those relationships. And I think that will help carry over us as law enforcement in general. I mean, we need to be a more approachable agency. We need to be a nicer agency. One of the things I plan on doing is my command staff, they're going to serve on different boards and committees throughout the community, because I think that's important. We have to be out there. We serve and we protect, that old adage. But we can serve our community in so many other ways as a law enforcement agency. Just being out there, talking with people, meeting with people, being on a committee, being on this or that. I think that educates all of us in a good way, because, this is like my experience on the Ballard board. I had no idea until I served on a nonprofit board what the issues are that a nonprofit has. I mean, at one point, we were so broke, we were taking out loans to make sure we were able to make payroll and to keep the lights on. So, we knew we had to really work harder on our donation process. But those are just the small issues that I think we have. We have to earn back the public trust across the community. Because of, we don't really have a lot of issues in Lawrence, Kansas, but nationally, there's not a lot of people that trust the law enforcement agencies. And I understand that. We have to do a better job. We have to learn, training our people, treating everyone with dignity and respect, treat people as you would want to be treated. I think those are the important things that have gotten lost over the last several years or decade. We're not a militarized agency, but, there are some agencies that look like that. I'm not about that. I want to be a sheriff's office, the agency. I hate using the Andy Griffith thing, but we need to be a nicer, agency where you just, the guys on patrol, get out of your car and talk to people. These are things that we were all taught a long time ago.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Clark.
I've been employed with the Douglas County Sheriff's Office for approximately 28 years. I have been in a supervisor role for 25 of those years. I consider myself a great leader in many areas in and outside of this agency. I know what it takes to be a good leader. It has been somewhat questioned, Dale Flory's choice to run for sheriff because he's a deputy and not a ranking officer. Great leaders are developed by watching and learning from other leaders. They learn who to build on, what to build on, and they learn what needs to be changed. Dale has earned the right to be at this table. He's not a supervisor, but in my opinion, he's a man for the job. He will lead with strategy, accountability, and trust. He will also consider other people who have previously not been included in important conversations before. A mindset that needs to be removed from law enforcement is of those who think they are above and superior to everyone else just because of their status, rank, or credentials. If you can't show regard and respect to who I would call your brother in law enforcement for over 20 years, how are you going to respect others in our community of less fortune than your own, who don't look like you or have the same ideas or beliefs that you do? One candidate said he would use his privilege to get things done. It doesn't take your privilege to get the job done. Your privilege doesn't do anything within itself. As a Black man, I've been through oppression and endured racism, and so did my ancestors. The strength and resilience we have as a culture is unmatched. Being aware of your privilege means you know how systemic racism and oppression work, but it doesn't mean you are in a better position to move the needed change forward. It takes a person of good character who is a servant leader and who doesn't rely on putting others down to build him or her own self up. And that is Dale Flory. Dale and I are ready for a change. Others in the community are ready for a change. Vote Dale Flory for sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you. Dale?
Can I just say what he said? But no, seriously, I've prepared a statement as well, and I'll just read it like Clark did. In closing, I want the community to know that my campaign for sheriff is a team approach. We at the Douglas County Sheriff's Office have been blessed with quality individuals that are dedicated to serving our community. Our Douglas County community has a vested interest in how the Sheriff's Office operates. I will continually seek out community input and work closely with all community members and agencies in order to best serve all the people in Douglas County. If elected and consistent with my team approach, Undersheriff Clark Rials will be instrumental in leading in the leadership of our agency. Clark and I firmly believe Douglas County needs a person of color in a top leadership role at the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. I can think of no better person than Clark to serve as my undersheriff. I have a leadership style that is more about empowerment versus dictatorship. It is my mission to empower my colleagues and the community I serve to step up into leadership roles, even in the smallest sense. As you may have heard in previous sheriff candidate forums, my opinion on jail expansion has been called invalid by a candidate because I have not worked at the current jail facility. I would remind this candidate that as a sheriff's office employee, we work at the discretion and direction of the sheriff. I have never been assigned to work at the current jail. That being said, you will not see me or my staff telling anyone that their opinion is invalid because they don't have the same experiences that someone else has. This is precisely the type of oppression and sense of entitlement I as sheriff want to eliminate from the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. It is my goal to encourage everyone to lead where you are at, and I have demonstrated this throughout my career in life. As public speaking, obviously, does not come natural to me, with each candidate forum, I have made it a point to come as prepared as possible. This generally involves me reading my statements, as I want the content of my platform to be the driving force for change. My stepping out and becoming a candidate for sheriff has taken administrative courage, and I have always considered myself a servant leader. While all three of the candidates for the sheriff have over 20 years of law enforcement experience, leadership exists when those on the front lines have the ability and are encouraged to be leaders. Thank you again to the Northeast chapter of Women for Kansas and the Native American Indigenous voters in Lawrence Douglas County for hosting this event. And thank you to the community for engaging in the conversation. A vote for Dale Flory for sheriff is a vote for needed change in Douglas County. Thank you.
Thank you. Stacy, unmute.
It's like you already know me. All right, I have 3 minutes here, so I'm kind of gonna skip around a little bit. I'm gonna maybe go back just for a second to the previous question when it talks about women in law enforcement. The narrative that law enforcement has and has always had is the adrenaline male narrative, which means anytime you see anything that has to do with recruiting or anyone trying to give recruiting information, it's always SWAT people and you're shooting guns and you're running around on an obstacle course and you're driving cars and you're doing all these amazing, great things. But really that's about 1% of what we do when it comes down to it. But that's what we put on there because that attracts a certain gender to apply. And what it also does is detract marginalized groups and LGBT people of color and especially women. It's not something that most women really want for themselves. But that's about 1% of what we do. About 99% of what we do is talk to people, whether that's through enforcement action, calls for service, community events. It's report writing and talking to people. Janae Harto, who was a retired chief of police for Minneapolis, says de-escalation is not new. It was created by women. It's called communication. That's what we do. We communicate with people, and that's why I think we've got to get more women into this business. We just do. We're you know, I'm not saying that men don't communicate well. I'm saying that there's different traits. Men are physically stronger, upper body stronger, but women also bring some really good attributes to this to law enforcement, and we really need to explore those and tell them that, you know, that's what we do, and you're good at it. And the women that we have working for us are really good at it. Some of the best max custody housing unit officers are women because they can communicate so well. So that's just something that I just wanted to kind of throw out there and finish up from my last comment. I know this question isn't for me, but you know, when you asked about what you would do if you didn't win, I hope to still be employed as well, but I hope to help whoever that is, because I have a lot of ideas as well. Things like community outreach and some of those things, and social platform, which is what we've all been talking about here in the last several months. So I just wanted to discuss that a little bit. In closing, thanks for allowing me the opportunity to connect with you this morning. Your forum today shows your voice is strong and should be heard. Jay and I see you, we hear you, we want to work with you and for you. Jay and I have worked our entire career and have earned our positions of leadership. When I say earned, I mean earned. You can't just self-proclaim yourself a leader. It's something that you have to work at. You know, we've all worked positions, we've all had places where we've been, but to be a leader is a title that somebody has to give you. You can't just say, I'm a leader. Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you. Well, so it took, what is this, our 6th forum? The gloves have finally come off. Dale, I'll remind you that I had to show you where the conference room was in the jail. It's been open for 22 years, and I had to show you where the conference room was the other day. It's disingenuous. You haven't even been out there to introduce yourself to the Burt Nash workers, the reentry team, any of the people who are on these programs and this reentry team that you tout so much. You talk about them like you know them, yet they don't even know who you are. You can't say that I have a leadership style when you've never demonstrated leadership, period. Dale, I love you, man. I really do. And we've grown up together, but you've never put in for a promotion. How can you say that you know that this is how you'll lead and this is your supervisory style? We don't know. When you came to me and asked me where I fit into, you said, where do I fit into your administration? This will determine whether or not I run against you. I said, Dale, I'm sorry. I didn't even know that you wanted to promote because you've never put in for a promotion. Okay. So this is not personal, but I'm not going to sit here quietly and let you guys run roughshod over me. So it's in closing, I guess, and yeah, I've got privilege. I've got white privilege, white male privilege, and I've had it my entire life. And only recently have I, in the last few years, understood what that even means. And it's not saying that your life wasn't hard. It's just saying the color of your skin didn't make it harder. So I should be allowed to use that privilege for the good instead of letting it just sit there and pretend like it doesn't exist. So that's right. I do have privilege. I'm going to steal your term, Clark. You've struck a nail with me, even though I think you meant to say nerve. So I want to be sheriff because it is time to make a change. I am a middle-aged white male who knows that he is not the future of this world. It's time for the women to take over. It's time for the people of color and the LGBTQ community to step to the front and begin to be heard. And I'm the guy who's willing to let them do that. I want to pivot this entire system on its ear, and I want to get away from this good old boy, 19 former sheriffs have said that I'm a good guy and I should run for sheriff. I'm ready to get done with that system. It is time for us to move into the future and take this seriously and start making the changes that the community demands and the community deserves. And I'm your guy. And Stacy, you'd be a fool to get rid of her. And I know all the candidates agree that she's the best part of, they will probably tell you that she's the best part of this campaign on this side of the table. But it's time for us to make the change, and I'm your candidate. Thanks. And thank you so much for having me. This has been really good. Thank you.
Well, we want to thank all of you for coming. And again, we will be posting this. It's on Women for Kansas Northeast, so W4KNE Facebook Live. Jennifer, do you want to say where people can find more information about your group?
Sure thing. We're on Facebook as well, and on Instagram, Natives Vote.
All right. Well, thank you all the candidates. And remember, voters, August 4th is the primary. Thank you.